Hey, welcome to a very special expert spotlight interview on Experts Unleashed. Today, I want to share with you and introduce you to a friend of mine, Henry Kaminsky, who's near and dear to my heart. Now, Henry is a self-taught graphic designer, a multi-million-dollar boutique branding agency owner, and somebody who has generated over $1 million with a single marketing campaign using what he knows in the branding and design space. Henry has worked with some of the biggest names that you've heard of: Bon Jovi, Fabio Viviani, Russell Brunson, among a laundry list of other well-known clients. And today, I want to bring Henry on, and I want to have him share his expertise on exactly what makes how he helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are ready to make a bigger impact in the world get more recognition and scale their expertise. Henry, welcome to the show, my man.
Dude, Joel, thank you so. What an intro. Thanks so much for having me today.
I spent a long time preparing for that one. So.
I love it.
Henry, so we've chatted quite a few times, and today we've had this idea of getting you on the show to really explain and dive deep into more of your process, because you have a fascinating process for branding. Branding is a very unique term. I was talking to somebody the other day where there's actually like no real definition of what branding is. Everybody has their own definition of branding, but knowing what you do in the space of working with personal brands and helping people get clear on their message and making a bigger impact in the world, I wanted to, hear from the horse's mouth of, what it is that you do to help these purpose-driven experts. So can you share a little bit of experience, a little bit of background about what it is that you do?
Well, I'm going to set the record straight for you guys and give you the actual definitions, the real definition of branding and personal branding, so people don't get it twisted. So the real definition of branding, and the one that I have inherited, is from a great mentor of mine, Marty Neumeier, and he talks about how branding is that gut feeling people get when they interact with your business or brand or you. Okay, so it means the way they react to your typography, the way they react to your logo, the way they react to your personality, everything like that gut feeling, right? It's what they say when you're not in the room. That's brand. And it's that differentiating factor. We got to take it back to the early days. Remember when cows were branded? They were branded to differentiate themselves from the other cows. I mean, that's exactly what branding is. Now, personal branding is the crossroad between how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you. Okay? And when that gap is wide, most of the time, people have a very hard time marketing themselves and positioning themselves in their marketplace. When they shorten that gap, when they squeeze that gap nice and tight, they become more aligned with their audience, and it gets a lot more easier to resonate and sell. So those are my definitions of branding, and those are that's the definitions that I use to educate my clients.
Yep. So one of the things that you said that I found was very interesting. It's like that you talk about number one, you said what people say when you're not in the room, right? Let's talk about that, because in the world of, you and I both come from digital marketing, direct response marketing, getting clicks and getting opt-ins and getting leads, right? That's very much surface level. You can see what those results are. And I feel like what you're saying there is, this is more of that hidden aspect of what people are saying behind your back, right? Talk about the importance of that and how that impacts somebody's bottom line in their business.
So people buy people. I am a firm believer of that. So if you can have the best product or service in the world, but if people don't like you, they will go and buy from someone else. The product or service may be inferior to yours, and be more expensive at the same time. And they're still going to buy from that person because they just don't connect with you. And so I think nowadays, the markets, no matter what market you're in, is getting extremely aware of the nonsense, the bait and switch, the clickbaity stuff, and this direct response type of selling. And I don't know if it's as effective as it was back in the day. See, the technology and social media and everything has gotten so much more advanced. I think people are calling BS a lot more than they did in the past, because all they have to do is Google you, and 13 seconds later, they're going to know whether or not you're full of crap or you're the real deal. And so it's very, very important to build that relationship equity and really start to create that foundation and that connection from the ground up. Because when you build that solid foundation, we'll talk about this a little bit later, you can build your house, AKA your brand, as tall as you want, because, or as big as you want, because that foundation is going to sustain it. I think what happens nowadays is entrepreneurs get an idea in their head, and they go out and they immediately try to execute, and they wind up having to redo everything from scratch because they're not resonating with their audience. And they're not doing that groundwork that should be done. So it's very, very important to establish your brand above all. I mean, we have a similar, we have friends in common, Kaylin and Brandon Poland. Mm-hmm. They were clients of mine 2-3 years ago, and I helped them through their rebrand process and rebuilt and rebranded some of their funnels. And that's when they took off and exploded, because their brand truly represented the value that they were delivering to the marketplace. So a lot of times here, people's brands need to catch up to their business. And that's exactly what Brandon and Caitlin did, was they invested back into their brand, and that's when everything exploded.
Well, I think that's important to talk about here, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, when does someone know that they need to do brand work, right? So there's probably a couple different types of clients that you work with. Somebody who has just started, they've gotten to that 10K per month yet, and maybe they didn't even work on their brand to start. They're just hustling, getting that revenue in. And then you've got Brandon and Kaylin, who are running a 8-figure, maybe even multi-8-figure company at this point, and they were going through a pivot. So like, what are some of the indicators that lead someone to know, like, okay, great, I need to consider brand work?
That's a great question, Joel. So there's a couple reasons why people come to me. One is they're getting out marketed by their competitors. All of a sudden they start to see their competitors coming up, and they start to have a larger presence, and they do a quick internal audit on themselves, and they realize that they haven't thought about their messaging and how it's resonating with their audience. Maybe they've neglected to do any sort of upgrade or enhancement to their brand identity and brand collateral. And what do I mean by that? So their marketing funnels, their websites, their social media presence, their content strategy, their positioning strategy. And what's happening is they're getting beat, right? They're just getting beat. The other client comes to me because they are on this, they have this momentum and this wind behind them, and they're achieving some great success. And any smart entrepreneur knows that when you start to achieve success like that, that the best thing you can do is invest back into yourself and back into your business. And they come to me and they say, we are ready to take our business to that next level. And we come in and basically we go through the strategy. Again, we'll talk about that later. And then we eventually help them execute this plan of attack. and we help them just increase the value of their business and then increase the value that they deliver to their audience. And how do we do that? Well, we walk them through a very specific process to help them get to know their client, their ideal client. And then we also help them with appreciating their audience. And how does that work? Well, you create an amazing user experience for them and they'll never forget you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Because I think those are two really important people to call out because, especially the ones, you've got momentum, you've got wind in your sails, right? You're achieving success, but making that lasting success actually happen. And one of the things that you said was increasing the value they deliver to their audience through brand messaging work, right? Can you give me some examples of like what that means? So somebody's got success, right? So they've already, their personal brand is taking off. What do you mean by increasing the value they deliver to their audience?
So that's again another great question. You're on a roll today, Joel. So what do we get paid for? We don't get paid for our service. We don't get paid for the products that we create. We get paid for the value that we deliver to our audience. So I always share this with my Brand Accelerator clients. When you start solving bigger problems for your audience, they will start cutting you bigger paychecks. I'll give you a quick example. There was a consultant that I was working with last year, already crushing it, solopreneur doing over $1 million in revenue. God bless her. Okay. She said, I want to double my business next year, but I am not positioned correctly in the marketplace to be perceived as that. So I'm $1 million earner, but you would never know by Googling me and what shows up. And so we brought her through the Brand Accelerator process. And through that process, I was able to diagnose some of the issues that were holding her back and then prescribe. They don't call me the brand doctor for nothing. I was able to prescribe a strategy to help her level up, right, the value. So what we found out was we saw the pain points that her audience or her ideal clients were facing. And we developed products and services and an identity that they were going to resonate with. And once we planned and mapped all that out, she went ahead and moved forward and had my team basically execute all of it. So it was multiple funnel designs and builds. It was a complete redo of her identity online. And now when you see her presence online, it's like, whoa, she looks expensive. She must be good. And that's not a bad, if you want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, one good way of doing it is if you're going to go through the pain of doing that, you might as well be seen as the most expensive. And I honest to God, it has helped her tremendously gain that respect. And now she knows exactly what her audience wants and needs. And she's just simply providing that to them. And so when you do that, your audience is going to say, they get me. Mm-hmm. And that's how you just skyrocket the value that you deliver.
Yeah. You said something that I wrote down with that client. You said she's $1 million earner, but you would never know it by Googling me, right? So it's almost like the Google test. Mm-hmm. You can tell, like, that's what's going to reveal all. The Google test will reveal all, right? I mean, I feel like that is really like the hidden branding litmus test.
Yeah. Like, well, okay. It's funny you say that because that was another reason why one of my other clients came to me, Adam Wenning. We both know him as well. And he came to me and he was like, I was watching your videos online and one of these videos came and bit me right on the butt one day and I had to sign up for this program. And he said, the quality of your brand, Adam said, you said in your video that the quality of your brand will determine the quality of your clients. And he said that rang my bell. And he was like, as soon as I heard that, I booked a consult call with you. Long story short, when I did my pre-diagnosis with him, he told me that when you Google his name, a network marketing photo shows up from like 10 years ago. And that is pretty much it. And he said, I've been doing amazingly well for about 24 months, and you would never know if you Googled my name. And he said, I want more of a legitimate, this is his words, a more of a legitimate presence online because, and you know, Adam, he's very modest, but I'll say what I know he was thinking is, I want people to see me as a true expert in this field, and I want the recognition for it. And so we worked him through the Brand Accelerator program. And within about 90 days, this guy was completely rebranded. And now if you look at him online, he's looking really, really sharp. And from what I gather, he's in a new industry right now that is absolutely humming over him because he's making a real splash. And he's really getting some really big results. So that's what I like to see out of my students.
Yeah, I've seen the transformation that Adam went through, and it's fantastic. It was there's an image of him with his suit, you know, like bending, like not bending over, but like leaning on his shoulders or leaning on his elbows on his knees, and like it's a solid picture. And
so we actually it's funny. I remotely directed that photo shoot for him. So I gave him one of my checklists for personal brand photography, and he brought that to the photographer that day. And he was texting me some initial images, and I was actually directing the shoot from my office.
Yeah.
And once he gave me those images back, once they were ready, we had such great imagery to work with, and you know, it came out fantastic.
I think the summary is this, man. The summary that I'm gathering is of anyone who's ready to get branding work. Like, what are those trigger points that people are finally ready to get branding work? And we've said it over the past two clients, like, you know, I'm a success. You would never know it. And it's time for people to know it, right? It's like, I'm a success, but if you were to Google me, you would never know it. And so these people are ready to finally step out into the limelight and be seen for who they really are. And I think that probably, like, that's what resonates with me when I've heard the story heard your client's success story over and over again. Like, does that ring true? Like what I just said?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Dom Fawcett's another one. He's a phenomenal case study. He's one of my favorites. You know, this guy came to me 18 months ago, working a 9-to-5 job he wasn't happy with. And he had this little side hustle going on. And he came to me and said, by the end of this year, I want to be out of my 9-to-5 and I want to be generating enough, you know, clientele to do this thing correctly full time. So I brought him through the process, and 6 months early, I get a text message from him that says, Henry, I put in my 2 weeks. This guy was driven. This guy knew what he wanted, but he didn't have the blueprint. He didn't have the map to get there. And so when he graduated fully from the program, he did this testimonial for me in front of me while we were on our last strategy call together. And I was almost in tears. You know, and so he gets up and he's got this flipboard behind him, and it's all pre-written out. I was like, look at this guy put in some work for this, right? And he says, before I met HK, he calls me HK. Before I met HK, I had 300 followers on Instagram. I was in a dead end job at work, and he listed all these things that, like, where he started, and then he said, 18 months later, I have over 80,000 followers on Instagram. I have multiple 5-figure clients. I have my own radio show. I have my own, I'm working out at a show on Netflix. I'm speaking from stage. I'm selling from stage. I'm traveling all over the world to speak. He said, I wouldn't be able to have done all of that in such a short period of time had I not had you. And dude, by then I'm like almost bawling because I was not ready for that speech. And it just goes to show if you're committed and you have the right mentor and coach, and you have somebody that's going to guide you in the right direction, and you're willing to put in the work like he did, anything's possible.
Well, let's talk about the Brand Accelerator. Like, talk about the process here, right? Okay, great. Someone's raising their hand, like, Henry, fantastic. I'm ready to step out into the limelight. Like, I want to be seen. I want to be recognized. I want to be heard. Like, what is the process that you take people through to make them become who they really want to be?
Sure. So it is a very systematic process. And when you try to skip a step, it's going to come back and bite you in the long run. So when I take people through the strategy program, I make sure that we leave no rock unturned, because it's, again, you're spiting yourself long term. So, I always like to say, measure twice, cut once. Do it right or do it twice. And that's it. So when you believe in the process and trust the process, you're going to win. So step one is to really identify who your ideal client is. And if you don't get clear on that, if you don't know that person better than they know themselves, everything is hard, right? And everything starts to break and crumble. When I have people come to me and say, my funnel's not converting, or my ads aren't resonating, or my social media is being ignored, I tell them, there is a disconnect between you and your audience. So we need to get to know them better. So we help those folks really identify who that client is, what their pain points are, and why they should buy from us and not our competitors. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is we got to map out the customer's journey. We really got to understand where they're coming from, because if we don't know, if we're not empathetic to what they're going through and how, and the pain points, then we don't know what to serve them. Right. So the more detailed we know about this journey, the better we're going to show up in their lives and be able to provide extreme value to them. So that's the customer journey process. And then what we need to do, once we understand who those folks are, we need to define ourselves. We need to define the brand. And so I walk through a very systematic, this is probably one of the most fun work sessions that I have in the process. And we start to map out what the voice and tone needs to be, what the look and feel needs to be. Who do we champion? Who are we for? Who are we against? What is our positioning statement? And that starts to really define who we are as a brand, because when we know who we are and we're confident and we believe in ourselves as a brand, then you better believe that your audience is going to believe you and feel that they're going to resonate with that confidence and conviction, and that's what they're going to buy. Okay. So we got to go through that. The next phase of the program is really getting clear on the plan of attack. When all-star teams win over and over and over and over again, they just don't show up on the court or the field like dumbfounded, like, I wonder what we're going to do today. They come prepared. They come with a strategy. They come with a plan of action. And so what I do is I really map out a full-blown potential marketing plan for them. So this is sort of the fire hose to the face session. And sometimes the client gets a little overwhelmed, because my job as your brand developer is to give you as many options as possible to help you achieve that result that you're looking for, that we set out to achieve before we even started working? Because that's one of the questions that I ask in the pre-interview. And what we do is we start to see everything that we could be doing. Now, I may not be able to deliver on all of those options, right? I may have to refer you out to people, but if you don't have options or you're not clear, then you're not going to know what to do. And that's where most of my clients struggle, because they are masters of their craft. They're not branding experts. They're not marketing experts. They don't have the savvy that I have on digital, on social media. So they don't know what they don't know. So when I come in and start to show them that perhaps they can create their own podcast platform, they can start to leverage other people's YouTube channels. They can start to, and all of a sudden their eyes get wide. You could see the white in their eyes, because they're like, whoa, I didn't even know these options existed. And so we map all of that out together. And then at the end, this is really, really cool. We start to package this up and we start to position them properly as the subject matter expert, as the authority in the niche. And so what we want to do now is help them create a system in place, because if you don't have a proper system to scale later on, you're not going to be successful, and the business will start to crumble. So we have to create that for them. So that's what we get into. And then basically at the end, we present them a execution plan. And when we do that, they have a very clear understanding of what needs to happen to achieve X goal. And I don't know about you, Joel, but when I got that clarity from my mentor, there was no stopping me. I was like a bull in a china shop. I was ready to rock. And it was just a matter of executing that plan. And then I got the results that I was looking for not too late after that.
Where do you think, so that 6-step plan, I'm just going to quickly recap it so people understand. So like phase 1 is identifying your goals, identifying your ideal clients.
Yep.
Phase 2 is mapping your customer journey. Phase 3 is defining your brand. Phase 4 is prioritizing your goals. Phase 5 is marketing, positioning, packaging, and pitching. And phase 6 is brand design and execution. Where do you think your clients, where's the light bulb moment finally click on? Which phase is like, wow, this is what I needed?
So a couple, there's not just one, there's two. Okay. One is when we define who they truly are serving, they're blown away because they think they know who they're serving. When they come to me and they say, we serve men and women from ages 18 to 65. Like that's when before they come to me, that's their answer when I ask them what the demographics are. After they come through the process, they say, Jenny, 28 years old, who's a stylist, who is making $28,000 a year, that drives a Toyota Corolla, aspires to have Gucci brands. She spends all of her money on makeup. She loves the finer things in life, but doesn't have the game plan to execute a strategy and a career to get there. Struggles with X, Y, Z, and those are the folks that it's night and day. It's night and day. So, and they always tell me, like, had you not brought me through this exercise, I would have never done this on my own. Like, I know I should do it, but I would never, ever do it on my own.
Right.
And I may or may not be guilty of that myself when I was starting my business, right? So when they actually invest in this and they do this, light bulbs go off like crazy. The other part of the program that they just go crazy over is when we get to the actual prioritization of goals. And they start to see all the additional opportunities, strategies, tactics that are right underneath their nose. They just don't even know that they're there. And they get very, very excited at that point because they're like, whoa, this could potentially make me millions of dollars over the course of years and really make my life a hell of a lot easier and more efficient. Because I know, you have a little guy and I have a little guy or almost around the same age. You're going on number 2. I don't know if I'm ready yet. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, like, at the end of the day, what do we want? We want time back. And one of the things that I help my clients specifically with this program is I help them really compress time. And when they compress the time, they see how simple it gets when you have the right tools, the right coach, and the right resources to really make things happen. And so that's when we really start to rev things up, because they get so excited at that point. They say, all right, Henry, what is this going to take as far as an investment goes to execute this? And they have an option. They don't have to use me. They can use somebody else. They could try it on their own. They could do nothing with it at all. But I can tell you about 98% of the people wind up moving forward, because not only did we spend 4 or 5 hours already together, so we've built that relationship, but my team of designers and developers and strategists, they had already have access to all of the strategies that we just laid out. So all they need to do is review that, which we have an internal meeting and do that. And then we set course. So instead of them going out and try to find somebody on Fiverr or Upwork, and that's cumbersome and that's overwhelming to some people. They just want to get it done at that point. They have the option to move forward with us, and we build the whole thing out.
I love that planning, that strategy session. Like, so the deliverable that you give them at the end of this Brand Accelerator is an actual execution plan. Like, okay, great. Of everything that we just talked about, of all the things that we uncovered, of all of the exercises that we did together, here's where it was a mess, right? I jumped in, I helped you take this mess and crystallize it and form it into something that's real, that's tangible, and that is going to allow you to finally step out into the limelight. Like, I feel like you're helping people become celebrities in their niche, and having that execution plan and having that roadmap is extremely valuable. Like, okay, great. Now I know the steps that I need to take to make this a reality. And I can only imagine what the value that these people, the value that they see once they get that execution plan in their hand. And
well, it's very interesting to watch, because they become super, super excited, because they finally, after 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years being in business, trying to scrap it out themselves, within a matter of a few hours and work sessions, we have a proven strategy that's going to get them to where they want to be. And that's powerful. Like, that just erased 10 years off of your life trying to figure it all out. And that's, that alone is priceless.
Yep. That's fantastic. So, Henry, I guess, what are the next steps? Like, of somebody who's ready to say, all right, Henry, I get it, man. Like, I'm tired of being, undiscovered in the shadows. I've got success. I've got clients already. Like, we're moving forward. Or, they're saying, I've just got momentum going, and I know the importance of establishing that rock solid foundation, because I want to pass the Google test, right? I want to be known when somebody Googles me, like, for who I really want to be. I want to control what's out there, right? What do we do next?
Sure. So what I do is, because this is my time is very limited. So I have to be very selective with who I bring into this program. We only take about 10 Brand Accelerator clients a year. So what I do is I direct them to my website, and they book an introductory consult call with me, and we sit down and we do a very thorough diagnosis to see where they're at, where they want to go, what I would potentially offer them as a resolution and result. And then we either send them off because they're not quite the fit and they're not ready, or it just doesn't make sense. There's more legwork that needs to be done on their end. Or we will bring them on board and we go through a very thorough onboarding process. We manage everything through a project management system, and we get them the first availability on my calendar to start the first work session. So there's about 3 to 4 work sessions, sometimes 5, because like I said, if we go over a little bit on one and we run out of time and we need to, dedicate an extra session, I am willing to do that, because again, if we leave something behind, it's going to bite us in the long run. And I'd rather not have to go through that. The beautiful brand identities that I create for my clients is because of the thoroughness that we do prior. So that's essentially the next steps. And then we take it from there.
Yeah. And I think to kind of frame this properly, it sounds like you don't really want to be a factory of churning people through this, right? You want to establish the long game with your clients, because that's what brand is. Brand is it's a long game. It is the foundation, right? And so that makes total sense of why you only take 10 of these clients per year, because it's a lot of work.
It is. And if you're spending that kind of time with people, and they're investing that kind of money back into their business, one, you got to trust who you hire and hire who you trust. And I'll say this up front, I always joke around, when you're getting wheeled in to get your knee operated on, are you looking back at the doctor going, doc, are you really going to use that scalpel? You don't question that, because at that point you've solidified the doctor of choice who you believe is going to help you get a better knee. Right. And so I've had clients come in the past, and this is just growing pains and learning experiences, where I've had clients come in and they start to become art director. They start to become strategist. They start to become copywriter. And I don't know if they just have that much time on their hands, or they're control freaks. I don't know. But that's typically not going to turn out well. That project is typically not going to turn out well. So if you're looking for somebody just to, whip up something quick for you, or you want to actually be hands-on, and tell people what to do and basically dictate the whole process, that's not going to be a good fit for us. Not to say that, our way is the highway. We want the best for your client. Yeah. And when we design and build brands for our clients, we're essentially building them for the audience that they're serving, not necessarily them. And some people that takes some time to get adjusting to, because a lot of times, in the past, I would take clients on and they'd be like, oh, you know what? We're going to change the logo to blue because my wife likes blue. Well, is your wife your client? No. Well, what if your client doesn't like blue? Right. And then you see the light bulb go off. And then I just have to remind them, listen, we want to design this brand to connect with them. Because if they don't connect with it, guess what? You don't have a business. Yep. So very, very important to understand that. And, when I play around with them and poke fun at it, they finally get it. And they're like, that's why you're the brand doctor.
Yeah. It then becomes a conversation of, why did you hire me? Right. And I like this process now of like, okay, buy into the strategy first and get that execution plan. So we can buy into that way of thinking.
Joel, your past life is in engineering, right? And I come from a construction family. When my family is building highways all over New Jersey, they're not coming together with a scribble on a piece of loose leaf paper. There's tremendous architecture. There's tremendous planning and design. There's tremendous engineering that goes into ever before a machine ever touches that job site. And that's what we're doing here. You know, would you ever travel cross country without a dialed in GPS? If the answer is no, then why would you run your business that way?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this basically becomes the North Star for everything you do, your content strategy, your social media strategy, your, your everything, email marketing, any messages that you send out is now aligned with this North Star. Everything's pointing back to that central focus.
That's it. Nailed it.
Henry, what else do we need to know about making deciding whether or not now is the right time for us to make a branding decision?
Well, if you're not truly being represented the way you should online or in your marketplace, now's the time to really understand the power of brand, because purpose drives brand. And when you can deliver your purpose in a meaningful way that resonates with your audience, that gets them to become loyal and just raving fans of your business, then that's the time to move forward. You know, I'm a firm believer that we're all put here on earth for a reason. And I just happen to be blessed with the eye for design, the creativity for design, and the ability to communicate with people really, really well. You know, for those folks that don't know who I am, you know, I come from a very humble beginning. My parents tried for 16 years to have a child. They were so, medicine wasn't the way it was back then. So they didn't have the answers. And I don't know if I would try something for 16 years and still want to move forward. But they did. And that story being told all throughout my childhood sort of embedded this persistence, this never give up attitude, refuse to give up attitude. And then when I was 2, I almost died from a very rare illness. I start to think, you know, as I get older, you might be here on borrowed time, my friend. So what are you doing with this time? Are you taking advantage of it? Or are you wasting it away? You know, and something happened to me recently. You know, my son's going to be he's going to be 2 in a couple months. And when I thought I was driven and motivated before he was in my life, and when he came into my life, everything changed. I mean, your whole life changes. You know, anybody out there that has a kid knows that, right? And I woke up one day and I said to myself, one of my biggest fears in life is that my son becomes of age to be able to Google. And he puts in his father's name and nothing shows up. Mm. And I said, I will be damned if that happens to me. And so, end of story. You know, the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And that comes from a great old movie, one of my favorites, The Bronx Tale. And I was put on this earth to really help my clients abolish complacency in their life. Because the last thing that I would ever want any of my clients to do, or any of you to do, is to wake up when you're 80 years old, look back and say, I should have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was powerful. Wasted talent, like abolish wasted talent. That is.
Well, abolish complacency.
Yeah.
And the saddest thing in life is wasted talent, because it truly is. I think we're all put on here. We're all put on earth with a superpower, and we got to find that within, and we got to use it for good. And I was just blessed to be able to understand that and learn that at a young age, and then execute it as I got older.
It's a fantastic story. I love that journey, like the whole background of even talking about how your parents tried for 16 years. And there's a connection there with, like, they must have had a North Star. Like, they must have had that thing that was guiding them of why they never gave up. And it's almost like now you can tie that into your, like, what you do for your clients, and you're driving that North Star. Like, you're helping them create that North Star that lets them build that brand, that foundation that is going to get them the results that they want of whatever they're trying to achieve. That was fantastic, man.
But thank you, Joel. I appreciate it, man.
So what I'm going to do now is, we're running out of time, and so obviously we're gonna drop a link down below, and for anyone who's interested in joining in learning more about what your brand accelerator is, we'll have a link down below. But Henry, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you for joining us on today's Expert Spotlight. And if you're watching this right now, if you're listening to this right now, and you feel that tug, you feel that tug, and you feel that fire that's burning up in you that says, okay, great, like, do I pass the Google test? Has that been something that you've considered? Do you feel like you want people to know who you are for, who you really want to be? Do you want to be noticed for who you really want to be? Like, do you feel like you're that superstar that nobody knows? I mean, if the answer is yes, like, I highly encourage you to talk to Henry, because if nothing else, hopefully you realize what Henry has to offer to the world, and going through his process will undoubtedly transform and shape your brand into what you want it to be. So with that being said, Henry, thanks again, man. And for everyone else watching, we'll talk soon.
You got it, Joel. Thank you so much for having me today.